Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of OverBOTChed, and it has been I feel like the minute we hit the finish recording button last week, from that point until pretty much yesterday, it was like a carpet bomb of developments and things happening from the actual action itself to, of course, all the reality show level drama of the league itself. So, as usual, we have the great Root Bear Richard with us, as well as Plexmatic from across the pond, to help us break through all the bachelor level drama in the Overwatch League. So I mean, I don't even know. So I was thinking about even where to start, because there's a lot to cover, especially if before we even get to the games this weekend and looking ahead to the coming weekend, which will also see the debut of APAC. And if you thought the NA teams were an up and down roller coaster of who's going to beat who and who's going to lose to who, I imagine APAC is probably going to be something similar. But we'll find out. First of all, how is everybody doing? Richard, how are you today? You're eating a Lara bar.
I'm good.
Are you?
Yeah, I was eating a Lara bar. I'm
energized now?
I am energized. My car, my legs are sore. I've been trying to get gains and be big like you, but it doesn't. It is so hard. I think I've told you about this. I'm like, I do not know how people eat this much. It's hard.
I told you offline before, man, and we could always talk about it more. It depends. If you really want, if your stone cold goal is man, I want 10 more pounds on my frame, then yeah, it's just part of the gig. Yeah. But if you just want to look and feel good, you don't necessarily have to pack on a bunch of weight.
True. But I'm doing well. The weekend was interesting. I mean, it was good. Yeah. And like I said, I'm just happy that cool stuff happened in the games. It is nice to see some changes and then some teams come back doing what they do. But hey, what? It's always interesting. This is one of those times where big meta shift. So all sorts of weird things are happening, and we've seen that before. So now we're finally seeing it.
Yes.
Overwatch. So it's a good weekend overall. Good games, man. Toronto
looks like seeing awesome. New teams come into the fray and say, "Hey, remember us?"
Yeah,
just because of a meta shift, that's actually really good and healthy for a lot of things.
That is
what the meta is, of course.
Sure, yeah, and I do think that is one of the best. And for everybody out there, you might have to forgive Richard's robot voice. Keeps peaking in every so often.
Oh, weird robot.
No, it's just when the signal scrambles for 2 seconds. It's
it's certainly more than meets the eye, isn't it?
Boo. If I had my boo sound effect from my regular stream, I would have hit you with it right now. But anyway, so all right, to try to cover all of this nonsense, let me flip over to our shared screen here. So we're gonna go into Richard's neck of the woods. This was covered a lot on social media. If you follow the Overwatch League stuff in general, it probably popped up on your timeline or in other stuff. So this happened, I think, on Wednesday or Thursday. Before, like I said, right after we finished our show, basically. So the first kind of salvo of big movements and changes and movers and shakers going around was right before the weekend started. New York Excelsior decided to make a change. Before this, first they signed on Sujay. So they brought themselves. Yep. And a much needed main support to a team that at this time had 3 flex supports signed. So that was exciting. Then the next day, which the next day, which we kind of maybe expected in some way, shape, or form, is hey, all right, three flex supports and a main support. That's a lot of support. And unless you've got, some undergarments that have a lot of girth, you don't need that much support. So, we kind of expected a release. And so unfortunately, Myungbong had a release post from the New York Excelsior. I would have showed that to you all on the screen right now, but it got deleted because if you're watching this on video, there was a subsequent post, because that post God, this is the post. The original thank you Myungbong post got a response. And that response was from Myungbong, who responded with question mark.
Yeah.
And that was so I'm kind of turn it over to Richard to kind of finish off the latter half of that. So that's where we were on that day.
Yeah,
and then
that day was unfortunate. It's one of those times where, I've been in ad agencies half my career, and I know the realities of creative process. And it's one of those times where I thought, this is a reality. It's so nuts when people are going after like an individual person. Like, think of it this: for this to happen, right? Any graphic has to be requested, designed, reviewed, approved, posted. There's like 5 different levels that this has to go through. So it means all of this happened. That entire top to bottom, cradle to grave approach had to occur, and they didn't communicate with the player. That's very
the one person that needs to talk to, they didn't.
Right? Like, what I think is fascinating is that there was a request made to make his farewell. Here, actually, I'll send you the link right now in Discord so you can.
Richard, really, your volume went way down again. Just FYI.
So I'll. That's really weird. I don't know what it is to Discord, man. I hate Discord.
Yeah. While you sort that out,
So yeah, the biggest thing though is someone had to request, right, in order for it to be produced. How do you request this when this has not been described to someone? Almost always, someone is let go. It doesn't matter what kind of job you're in, contractor or not, you are told that this is the situation, and then a post goes out. You might be writing it, but you usually do those two things at the same time at minimum.
Yeah.
So it's an amazing failure of general organization. But what was even crazier, what I thought, was that, okay, it happens. They put it out. It sucked. I get it. And then it goes. Now, when you read this, you read this, you get this last line. To our fans, this is a mistake we will not be repeating. We have immediately changed our communication processes moving forward. New York pulls off that glorious reverse sweep of, who was it? Oh, Houston.
Easy. We'll get to that. Easy now.
Okay, anyway, so then the win graphic goes up, and Myungbong is.
Yes, I saw that.
Now
I was gonna say.
And and then they delete that. Now, and then it just so happened that the next day there's like portfolio shares that came out from some of the designers, and that had a release graphic for Kellen in the packet. So the reason all this is pretty wild, it's not about individuals, but you have to think that blows up. Some people are completely insane, and they're just saying the most awful things to like individual staff on Excelsior and NYXL, which is crazy. And then it becomes this whole fight between, don't beat up them, anyone mistake, don't beat up the social media managers, blah blah, etc. etc. But
don't shoot Mr. kind of thing.
And I agree. And all I'm thinking through this whole process, as everyone is talking about this, as I said, how are you skipping out on the fact that all this started because you publicly humiliated somebody?
Yes.
This has nothing. Don't make this about you. Isn't that the whole toxic trait thing when you take something that you've done and because you get blowback? I mean, don't actions have consequences? That is the mantra, right? Actions have consequences. That's what people will say all the time. Now, I'm not saying you should beat anybody up over this or lay into them. I think that makes no sense. I think it's unfair. And I think at the core of it, this is an example of one of those problems that happens in content creation, or how you manage what exactly all of Overwatch League and Overwatch League teams are, which is that you've got to think about this like a sports team. So this is what I think is fascinating. You publicly humiliated somebody, claimed that this is such a huge mistake and you're deeply sorry, and then you didn't take the care or consideration to go through creative. That is a first requirement in any form of crisis management or any kind of F up. I've lived, again, when you're in the agencies long enough, oh, believe me, we've blown it. And you check every word, every image, every single thing, because really for two reasons. One, you've got a mistake, and two, you are typically scared about your position. You are. You're worried the client's going to fire you. It does happen.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder whether or not the Myungbong release post was as an automated tweet. It's like they were like, okay, hey, we'll get this tweet ready to go. We'll inform Myungbong. Then it comes out too soon.
The thing is, nobody.
Yeah, that's
not. And if you do, you have a terrible operational process and a bad form of comms management. That's the issue. And at the core, if you really are deeply sorry, they say about putting you through this situation, and also let me get at the grammar. Although we wish this was communicated better, we truly appreciate your time with us and wholeheartedly want to want the best for you and your future endeavors. One awful statement. Everyone knows about future endeavor. It's, we've all lived through that, wrestling wise, etc. But what I think is funny is that they're saying they're deeply sorry for putting you through this. And although we could have communicated better, we do appreciate your time with us. No, it's not about appreciating their time with us. His time with the team. You publicly humiliated somebody. And if you cared, you would make sure to not continue to humiliate them, given the fact that no one's the creative, that's an issue.
Yep.
That's a huge issue.
It's a case of put the shovel down quickly before you...
Exactly. Now, when it comes to what happened when that Kellen post went out, and this was, I thought was fascinating. When it comes out down to the portfolio share, even I made the comment and said this is probably just a really unfortunate trick of timing. It happened. But you take a look at the responses, people saying, well, it's really normal and creative to have templates. We can click through this and we can get any player and they're all here. And I'm like, because it would be weird if you had templates for everybody's release. That's just a very strange way to run a company. Could you imagine if all of us had if all the companies or places we work, they had everybody's release notes ready?
I don't know. Yeah. I feel like esports is the one business though where I'm like, yep, just take the time, make it all now, because at some point,
standard protocol for this kind of thing is you make a dummy post with generic font because it takes literally a minute to do.
Yeah.
You don't need to pre-make all the templates. I just think that's a bad use of time.
Yeah.
When you have your content house, that's not a good use of time. It also leads to accidental error. It does, because once you pre-make too many templates, it does happen all the time. I've seen this as well too. I've been there with product launches where we had the wrong brand name. It was bad, the wrong product name. It happened. But I thought it was funny in that, again, I get it, but also then the comments came out. And again, this is just me. It's a general recommendation for anybody when you're doing portfolio. If you're releasing a portfolio and you say this is the work I've done with Team X, you can only show the work that has been contracted, approved, and published.
Yes.
So a Kellen release note cannot be in your portfolio.
Or I guess should not, in theory.
No,
right? I mean,
it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
You can show the other one. You can show the Myungbong one.
Yep.
But you actually can't. You're not supposed to show the ones you haven't done, because it's not about the things that you're doing, because technically you submit lots of stuff, but that doesn't mean it was
right. What is your published work with X client or company?
You're just saying this is stuff I'm designing. You can do whatever you want. So that's one of those things where I said, how I always talk about there's these variants and standards and expectations between the esports world and everybody else, and there's a little bit of a myopia, right? But in the end, the reason I was so disappointed with that, this has to it had to go through so many levels and so many layers, and at the core of it, the entire discussion that everybody partook in was all about, oh, it's not so-and-so's fault. I'm like, that is not the discussion to be had. Real question we should be really thinking about, and what we're not really caring about. And this is what I thought was fascinating. Oh, well, Myungbong said this, and they're saying well, it can go both ways. I'm like, guys, people, why are we not talking about what happened to this? It is humiliating and embarrassing and insulting to get this kind of note, and no one talks about it. That's actually not the issue, and that to me is the biggest problem with the situation. It turned all into, people either like grandstanding, saying, "Oh, we're the best," no one can bring us down. I'm like, that's your response.
You brought yourself down.
But if that's your response, if imagine this, like if I did something terrible, and completely humiliating to you, Matt, and I'm like, well, you can't bring me down. I'm like, that is not the point. It is not about me.
Right.
And I think that is that's the problem with this whole situation.
Yeah.
It's that we've actually skipped the actual problem. And clearly nothing actually was they didn't, remember when I said, like, we were talking about people like stepping over their own mother to get their chance, and that's why you'll never get solidarity at the developmental level, like tier 2 Overwatch. It's going to happen again. The latest releases, the latest changes are going to drive the same pattern. But it's that these are words where if you're deeply sorry and you've truly made changes to process, you would have checked all your creative. In fact, and again, little inside baseball for everybody. When this kind of thing happens, like at an actual real creative, real advertising level, everybody on the entire interagency team, everybody knows, and everybody is told to check their stuff.
Yeah.
That is a requirement. So then the only thing I can think is, well, maybe they don't know that. And again, people were completely insane, trying to poke at like, well, the SMMs are this. No. Like, yeah, guys, you have to understand, like, they get told to do certain things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm certain there's a check statement. There is a requirement probably for them to verify. I doubt anyone says, just post this right now and you post it. Because again, even at the tier 2 level, if someone's like, okay, we're releasing so-and-so, I double check. I mean, if you have to do that for like Revival or any other tier 2 team, I'm pretty sure that would happen, right?
Yeah.
That can happen in an Overwatch League team, where you're in a job and you're paid money. I'm just saying, like, it is possible.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's the grandstanding responses and the whole, like, let's just come together and fight against people being mean to us. Like, you're worried about people being mean to you.
Yeah.
And if that is what then why are we caring so little, right? About something far bigger. And like, this is a visa worker. That means you found out on Twitter that you have 30 days to get out of the country. That is how fast you have to leave. And all the company has to give you is a ticket back, one-way ticket back. That's it.
Yep. And 1 month pay. Bye.
Yeah.
Right. 30 days to leave. Wow.
Yep.
So anyway, that's really it. And like, and then now they just don't post anything when they lose.
Yeah.
Like, although when they win, they post a picture of Myungbong.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like the thing is, I'm like, and then everyone's like, well, we just don't want to post anything. I'm like, you do realize you have other players on the team. Like, what no one talked about.
Plus,
you
could adjust the graphic as well.
Well, the thing is, you saw though, like the other players when that happened, they all reacted too. No one's talking about how it feels to be a group of young foreign visa workers in another country where you have no rights, and then you just saw your like teammate fired over Twitter. Where's the discussion there? And I'm biased because I do work and I've supported groups like the Migrant Workers Alliance because I know all about the way these systems work in like just for like how I've been a visa worker and I've seen it here. I've seen what it's like. You have no recourse. And that's what I find so offensive. Like, so now we're just not going to talk about anything. Stop making this about your image and your ego. You realize there's still a whole bunch of other players there. Maybe they lose, they have their comments, but you know what? You still should be promoting them. That is part of the job. That is part of the role of the team. Yep. And now it's just like, we're not going to say anything because we might hear something bad. Yeah. But That's not the end of the world. And you're definitely not going to create change if you avoid the problem.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, of all the releases and transfers we've seen, I'm going to go on a little bit so Rick can sort his mic out and such. But to me, of all the releases, transfers, and all the rest of it that we've seen over the past week, this is probably the worst handled one of the lots, in my opinion, because you never really informed Young Bung before the post went live, and that to me is something that's kind of not something you want to see, because at the very least you want it to be known that you are getting released before the post comes up, not the other way around. And I'm sure you guys could agree with me on that one.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it at the same time. It happens. If when you see someone get sacked from, an office job, they come in the morning, someone takes them to a side room right away, so they never make it to their desk. And all their items on their desk are boxed and sent to them at home. It's how you get fired. It's how people get fired. We've all probably seen it.
Or in that one show, what was it? They get taken to the break room. I was trying to think, Matt, you know what
Severance.
show I'm on about. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Again, it just raises a lot of questions about. So I said that it's organizational operations and what actually goes on. And this is an organization that has. I mean, when I was doing an interview 2 weeks ago, I was talking about how I really do believe that they set the gold standard for how to understand audiences, engage, communicate, and flow. It is they were hands down the team that I encountered and the folks at that org around 2018. This is just one of the pound for pound, one of the best crews I've ever run into. It was wild.
Yeah. Especially given the rosters they've had.
Yeah, but I'm talking about just like off the screen and behind
the
scenes.
I've heard that from multiple people. The social team, the media team, the marketing team, everybody. It was like top notch and
stellar.
Yeah.
And it's not that you don't make mistakes or can't make mistakes. It's how callous the response is and how hollow it is given the follow through. That's why I even wrote what happened to you folks.
Yeah.
You're basically now every company that if you're from New York, we've all worked for them. We know what it's like when you're nothing but a number. I'm sorry. That's how you operate because you have control over a mouthpiece or position and everyone else can just keep on walking. That ain't healthy.
Yeah.
That's not good. And it's those are the companies we hate in New York.
Yeah,
or anywhere, quite frankly. But that's why I think it's just sad because in the end, there's still a lot of other players. There's managers, Nugget, and and Kellen is doing great work, Unsun J. All these folks are doing well. It's great things happening with this team.
It just sort of takes away from what's going on in game a lot.
Mm-hmm. But like I said, the other thing I would say again, my little pro tip to anybody in the marketing or communication space. If you release 40 people off your roster, don't be like Paris and announce the new people within an hour. You do it the next day.
Yeah.
Well,
speaking of Paris,
Jesus. You're okay, thank you. Next, this is just basic stuff to not make yourself seem like a callous prick of an organization.
Yep. So to catch everybody up, just the overview. So one of the other big pieces of news as far as the roster shifts, which if people are not aware, the Overwatch League trade deadline is August 18th. So there's a little bit of between this stuff with the justice, people, all the rumors people are hearing. There's actually a couple of pretty important points to be made here. Avast has talked about this. Yiska has talked about this, etc.
Yeah.
So the trade deadline for this season is August 18th. So that's a primary reason you're seeing a lot of these drops, switches, signings, etc. So what that means is, you have until the 18th midnight to trades, do all this stuff, and what everybody's kind of in an uproar about is it's better to drop them now, in theory, and I put big question marks on that, because if they would have held on to them to the 19th of August and then dropped them, they would no longer be eligible to play for any team. because if they had an Overwatch League contract. Now, you can be signed after August 18th if you do not have an active Overwatch League contract, whether you're a Contenders player, etc., or an Overwatch League player who has been released from their team. So in theory, the rest of these players could get picked up and play for another team now because they don't have active Overwatch League contracts, and they could get picked up in the next few days. But let's be honest, how likely is that to happen mid-season? I mean, it is a weird shifting meta. It's really, really unlikely. It's a really tough spot, and you throw a lot of careers into upheaval.
Especially if the team you've previously been on hasn't been performing well. I mean,
sure, of course.
I get Paris wanting to reset. That I'm not disputing, because obviously they're 1-13 or something like that at this point. So I get why you want to refresh the roster, but it's a shame for me because I'm looking at these players released, and I see a lot of quality on these. I mean, these names. I mean, Khan is, quite frankly, one of the best honors I've seen in the league in recent times. Stuck on brig duty, and even this weekend he was being pressured out the game. Then you had Guard, who is really stable. It just seems, it's almost like I can't really put your finger on it.
It's a classic. I mean, not every. God, I hopefully somebody else can get this. I'm blanking on the phrase. The sum of your parts, right? It's everything. It's not always.
Yeah.
The greater good is not always the equal of the sum of the parts. Like, you can have a lot of great pieces, but it doesn't always come together. And so, like, I totally get that. Just because you have individual, well-made pieces doesn't mean it makes a final product. The other big thing is too that, you know, the elephant in the room is the Paris Eternal are becoming the Las Vegas Eternal. Now for people who don't know, they already play in NA right now. I don't know if they're in Nevada or Texas or wherever they're based.
I know they're based in America at the minute.
Yeah, like it's an EU organization, but they play out of like their player house, their offices. They're playing out of America.
London are in Texas, I believe.
I believe they're in Dallas, and that's why a lot of these teams are moving, especially from EU, because there's just no infrastructure in EU and ping and all this other stuff. So, but I know they're moving to an entirely NA-based roster that, you know, don't want to deal with visas and all that.
Well, they would have to anyway, right? That's part of the requirement.
Yep.
Because you know, you have to have like developmental teams that come from your regions, et cetera, et cetera,
yes,
et cetera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think so. Like, I think we all kind of expected this postseason. It was just a little bit of a blow up. I mean, like, blow up in the middle of the season. I think that took a lot of people.
Well,
but
I think they also cost less. Remember, right?
Of course.
Like, you remember when I talked last week about, like, guys, budgets, money? You saw Justice. You saw that article come out talking about Justice,
have that too,
the finances. Look, not for nothing. Okay, if our games in this league are averaging 40, 50,000 people per game watching, right? And everyone's like, oh, it's great. Don't always look at the numbers. Okay, even though that's the wrong opinion, let's just go with that, okay? The average decent big streamer gets 30,000. Okay? Which means you've spent $20 million.
Who's your average big streamer? And how many big streamers?
There are tons of streamers that are pulling in 20, 30,000 views, but they're outside of our game space.
Sure.
There's lots of streamers. But the question you have to ask yourself is this: to get the same amount of eyeballs, how much money does it take to create those views? Versus somebody who spent $20 million for a franchise, you're spending you've got how many full-time staff? You've got to have all these organizations, all these teams just to get 40,000. So you're spending literally orders of magnitude more to get the same or less. How does any of this work?
It is absolutely mind-boggling. I mean, and that if we like, we can or we can't, depending on how, like, we can get a whole discussion on the sustainability of the league as a whole. Yeah, I mean, the franchise fees and everything to begin are outrageous. This league is a classic case of sprint as fast as you utterly can before you crawled. You know what I mean? I like the idea, and people talk about the early days of like, hey, we're going to take this kind of burgeoning industry and give it stability, and you're going to have to pay your players and insurance and take care. And then it all fizzled away when money didn't come back. And now, but they're still like struggling to hold on to the system of this. Well, yeah, but we have to do this, but none of it is sustainable. None of it is affordable for anybody. So it's just, it is just.
Yeah.
Classic went way too big before you even had your feet underneath you. With millions and millions and millions in the hole. And it's at that point where I'm like, I feel bad, but I'm like, because there's some of these incredibly talented players and all this stuff. And I love the idea of being able to do this for a living, and you should if you're that good, because I believe in this industry as a whole. But maybe some of these guys should not be getting $250,000 a year to play Overwatch. It's not their talent, but like the system can't handle it. And
this is where we get into, and this is one of the funny challenges, right? This is getting very close to a very real discussion around how much funding should various sports leagues be getting? What should salaries be? What should and it is not necessarily as simple of an answer as people want. It's a tough thing. I watched the WNBA. I've watched the NWHL, right? Just because they had, New York teams. It was great, But like you look at the Premier Hockey Federation, and people are saying, well, are you going to say they should have? And look, there's a reality where, and the argument always is from a lot of folks, well, how do you get, like, people in the NHL get their salaries because the teams get a certain draw on this certain folks? I'm like, okay, that's a fair argument. I would also say, okay, cool. That means you also have to dump money, though, into markets to develop them, because you wouldn't have any hockey in America if hundreds of millions of dollars weren't spent fostering hockey, south of the Mason-Dixon line. That's just reality. We can't ignore that. Same thing with basketball. People forget how empty those Raptors games were when the NBA first expanded to Toronto. It was actually not hard to get a ticket, Yeah. But then the question comes down to compensation, and this is the whole challenge. It's that, I think people are completely off base when they'll critique the WNBA. Oh, it's like, that's irrelevant. It is all about developing a game. People are missing the point, and that is a loss leader. It always is. The same way that you can make the argument about revenue sharing to poorer performing teams as also a free handout, and I don't see anyone making that argument. That's just reality. But imagine Plex, if we were like, well, parachute payments shouldn't exist. You lost. You get nothing. You could make that argument, right? No parachute payments, right? You could make that argument. But the question is, it's a return on investment it's an assessment of stability. Can you make this work with the budget you have and then your business plan and your revenue model? Like it scales, right? An indie show, an indie promoter could bring in on contract a huge wrestler, right, for one show, and all they're going to do is lose all their money on that show. You could keep doing this, and it might be fun, but it doesn't sustain itself. It's not about like making money. It's about just breaking even so you can survive for the next show.
Yeah.
And it's gone so far, and again, to make that happen, you actually need to create. It only works. At least my thinking when I saw this model was it only worked if you actually found a way to localize, because you could create localized revenue streams. That's why they have operating territories. There are operating territories, right? For Overwatch, they not unlike baseball or hockey or football, like territory. Like, fun fact, Rochester belongs to Toronto. It's my favorite thing. So if you're like at RIT, NYXL can't go to RIT.
Yep,
because that's Toronto Defiant territory, and that's cool. I'm good with that. I like Rochester.
Yeah. I almost went to DreamHack Dallas, and I was asking the Outlaws. I'm like, hey, it ended up not happening, but I was like, hey, should I do some activation? I'm like, I could bring some like merch or all this stuff, and they're like, we have to go to the Fuel and Envy or whatever, now Optic, and we have to get permission. It's kind of, I was like, wait, really? Like, anything we do in their city, the surrounding area, is like anything considered an activation has to. I never knew it was that.
I didn't know that.
No, and it's actually good. But think about it. What value is territory if you do not activate within the territories?
Well,
that
yeah.
requires you then to have a very good audience development strategy and then stratify your revenue sources and figure out how to do things. So years ago, when I was in my market research days, I was doing work for Hockey Night in Canada at CBC back when they still had hockey rights and weren't bought out. But the whole problem they were facing was that the big networks like at Rogers, they were just buying more and more games because you buy out the games. That's how you win. And you buy the license, right?
Yep.
And what I told them is I said, you can't win. And, as you can imagine, the marketing team and the senior staff at CBC Sports is like, what do you mean? I said, you're going to realize that you are not the product. And as much as I love Hockey Night in Canada as being this premier broadcast standard, it is the best hockey. It was the best hockey broadcast. The Eastern broadcasts were the best in the world. Best camera work, best announcers, best everything. But I said, the league is the product. The games, you're just a conduit. Now, people love what you represent in their heads and their hearts. So you're like the ministry of hockey in Canada. So what you have to start to think about is how do you actually grow? And my whole strategy for them was to actually partner with bars. Because when you actually start to understand how people watch hockey, there was a huge amount of people who watch these games who don't actually like hockey that much. They do it because it's a social outing for them to share with friends and family members. Right? There was an over-index at the time for women over 35 because they're like, yeah, it's like family goes out, the kids play hockey, that's how it was. Okay, cool. So I told them, I said, what you should really be working on, team up with places that are always showing games anyway, and you should start to brand those events as Hockey Night in Canada experiences and start to basically own the concept of the experience of watching hockey. And then the natural extension is then to lean in to what you actually have as these like community outreach efforts, which is like, Hockey Town, and when you're working with minor leagues, basically things that start to connect you to what your expertise is, which is broadcasting. Because what you really want to do is give yourself a defensible position that these big networks can't buy out because they will always have more money because you're government run, right? It's the CBC, right? You have budget limitations. What you can do is it makes sure that even if you lose the programming, you always own the experience. So that way you never lose that connection point. So it gives you something to launch off of. And you would be surprised. This is when people are getting back into retro. You could get like Peter Puck shirts. And I said, I'm not saying you're going to make all your money off of merchandise, but you are in a losing battle. It is time to pivot and realize that what you actually represent is the best content brand in hockey on the planet.
Yeah, I mean, steering back to Paris just for a moment here, the one thing I actually appreciate. So yes, they've lost these players, but two of the players that come up, I don't know if you've got that graphic ready to go, or at least some of them, but the two players that two of the players that I have seen they've signed are Lucamino and Rakatak. They are a scary support duo.
Oh yeah, awesome.
So I am legitimately looking forward to seeing those two play. I mean, full disclosure, I've not seen much of them, but from what I've seen, they are good.
Oh, Rakatak is great. Oh yeah, I think Paris will be a cool team, man. I'm really looking forward to it.
For all the hate they're definitely going to get for releasing these players. They've picked up some good players in place, and of course you got to factor in Wub and Dove as well. Yeah, those two are good. So the scouting for Paris over the last couple of years has been really good.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, remember they lost Neptuno to retirement, I believe it was last year or the year before. Only to pick up Dredro, who looked better than, I mean, no offense to Neptuno, but Dredro looked like a blooming breath of fresh air. Then they lost Elivote to a constant injury. They bring in Vestola, and he looks like he's been at the top of the league for ages. So the scouting for them is actually really good. So
it's really good. I also think the scouting for Houston's great because they have 2 ex-Revival players on there.
Oh, you guys are doing, look at this. You guys are doing all my transitions for me. No,
do you have any how much Revival is around? Like Wub was on Revival, Lep and Doge were on Revival, Aspire was on Revival. Like I'm just waiting. Like, here's the thing: we also literally had every player at one point on all the teams.
Yeah, I was going to say,
yeah, sure.
Default. But actually, the core, sort of the core, I still remember like that original one. Was like we had like Booger, Fact, Aspen, Aspire, Razor. Doggo was on the squad when they were still playing. When she was still playing. But yeah, like what I think is interesting. I just hope that this doesn't lead to the whole thing where everyone's again stepping over their own mother, brother, and comrade,
right,
to just try to get their shot.
Okay.
Because all these contracts suck too. We all know this. We all know they're going to be on some like 30-day horrible contract,
and then maybe get picked up for a league minimum, maybe a hair over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like,
when they were like, everyone has a. Do you remember it was like everyone's going to get a 401k and health benefits, all these things, and we're going to make sure it's not a boiler room for people.
Yeah. So, Richard, let me ask you this, just real quick. Short and sweet. What do you make of Lep and Doge as players? What do you think they'll bring to the league?
You know what? I'm actually not sure. That is so weird. And look, as much as I'll poke at Houston in the last game, like this is their first run. You know what I mean? In the setup, but they're good. They're good. One of the benefits and one of the great joys I had when I was in Contenders is you would see things that were just awesome. Like you would see players and you'd see them like there were those high spots where you saw their max potential and they're good. But they're part of the squad. Again, I hope I'm not mistaking the timing, but this was about the time when the entire roster moved over to Doge. I hope I'm not making a mistake there. That'd be rather embarrassing. But
it was embarrassing last week.
Yeah, let's not talk about spicy chip challenges anymore.
Oh my god, yeah, that was too good.
Like, you go find me one play. Oh,
literally video one. It was great.
Yeah,
but they're solid. One thing that I was liked about these two players is that they were like mentally solid. They just kind of went through, got things done, didn't freak out, just like get shit done. But what I think is going to be interesting is that when you put this in the context of so many other players now at the same time joining, like this is the greatest amount of roster shifts at the largest proportion than we've seen since the start of the league of people coming in, right? These folks also know each other's style. And what I really want to see is how this could evolve the movement, because one thing, as you've seen in Contenders, is there's a lot of like Hail Mary movement, man. You just spray and pray. And in this kind of a meta, I think it's going to lead to some pretty wild gameplay, because thing that I think is true about so many Contenders players is they are fearless. You have to put everything in. It's like watching the championship level football.
Yep.
You see the
whether it goes to FA Cup.
You have to just do whatever it takes. And I want to see that, because we're in a rather clinical meta right now. And I think we need a little bit of that free form Contenders insanity to liven it up, I think, as viewers. But I think we're going to see some really wild stuff. And I think it's going to be some of these players now making their big shifts up that are going to be leading the charge.
Well, as long as they don't have to wait 2.5 minutes for the first kill.
I was going to say, this is not a clinical meta at all to me.
It's clinical, meaning it just goes. I mean, it's a system.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Go. Gotcha. Yes. Like it seemed
Overwatch. I call
kind of. Yes. Exactly. It's system. This happens and this happens, and eventually one of these teams gets this, and then we roll through. Okay. Onward and upward. But no, I thought Lep had a really great talking about exactly what you said. Main support, which is good. That's a good thing for Houston. Super aggressive on like Lucio. It was in there and just.
I mean, the games were aggressive.
Booping damage. Like, yes, everybody was like full sending it, which again can be very exciting. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, Vancouver. Like, look how like once they like turned on the Jets. I mean, you know me. I'm always biased towards Aspire. Huge fan of his, but crikey, man, that guy was just like laying it in.
You can tell he put the work on that soldier.
If there's one player now that like pay him more, I don't care about sustainability. That young man, holy shit! Like, he was carrying Vancouver on his back,
and that's why. Like, I mean, we had another player who played. The other DPS who played with Aspire was his fellow Razor, kid from Northern Ontario. I hope he. I'm not sure if he's still playing actively, but I'd love to see him pick around too, because you have to be aggressive. You've got to be like, that's what kills you in development, right? Like you have to go out. You can't be afraid.
Yeah.
And Aspire though was like, he is so comfortable, and his mech skills have always been incredible. But what I love is how consistent, smooth, man. He is a smooth operating, stone cold killer right now, and it is incredible to see. Yeah, no, I'll always poke at Vancouver, but all that said, I mean, I think what you saw is that like this is like, it's not about them finding the meta. It's just them like settling in, and I'd like to think that some of this is coming from DPay, right? I have to believe that this is some of it. And I think that's friggin' awesome. It shows you the impact systems and organization can have, because that team has always been good. Like
it's
as
just
players,
who could unlock the talent. Kind of
thing.
Yeah.
And I love it. Maybe they said, just go for it. Maybe that's all they had to tell them. Go for it. Stick together, like stay together, but just go, risk it. When you're not sure, risk it, because that's what they were doing, and it was phenomenal. The game against Toronto was just like it was like just a brawl. Like it was just head to head, kicking the crap out of each other. It was madness.
Yeah.
Who wanted it more? Especially
it was
that
one
last
of my
fight.
favorite games. Yeah, it was one of my favorite games of the season. Like it was just was the only exciting. Like I mean, that was the exciting game for me this weekend. Not just because it was Toronto, but because of how it was working. You know what I mean? Watching New York claw back against Houston, it was like how it was working. Florida was awesome to watch. Shock again, just like they're showing that they're pretty damn unstoppable. I really want to see what happens. And then Boston was the one I was like, the Glads thing was weird to me. So I need to watch that whole
Boston,
game.
they've made a new signing, haven't they, Matt?
Mad,
yeah,
right?
I got it. Yeah. So like we'll shift it. We have two more
transition once again.
Two more shifts actually. Before that, while we're on Houston, we did say goodbye to Piggy, which I really thought was a bit of a shame, because I figured bringing on Doge. Hey, now we got a main tank. Dante can be our third DPS. That's fine. Just in the rotation, 3 DPS seems fine. And then. And then you'd have a Piggy who's a great off tank, and then you have Doge who's now your main tank, a well-rounded tank line. That was kind of where my head was going, and not to nail my own organization, hi guys, to the grindstone, but that's not a phrase.
It is now.
But they tweeted about after this, because everyone was like, well, wait, what's going on? Is Dante moving? They said, who's leaving? Who's this? We will move forward for the rest of the season with an 8-person roster, which was such an unnecessary tweet. You didn't have to put that out. You didn't have to respond to all the people going, who you getting rid of? You didn't have to respond to any of it. You could have just done, we've signed these 2 new players. It's very exciting.
Oh yeah.
And then to literally sign that day, and then the next day we get this, and Piggy, who's a great player and a beloved player by a lot of people, is released. So, if that was what your plan was, fine. Or if that was kind of part of the table, I get it. It's business. But you don't tweet, we're going forward for the rest of the season with an 8-person roster. That, or unless there's another tank we're signing and we don't know yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's been sort of the pattern for this week, though, right? Stop writing so much. Just stick to business. Stick to what you're trying to get done, right?
Yeah.
Stop trying to make all these rationales and sort of overtures to, I don't know, redirect a discussion. Just, it happens. Changes happen. And the more people try to cloud this with like, well, what if people think that it's bad, or they think it doesn't matter?
This is something. And tell me if you're on what's part of this kind of, and we've kind of alluded to it before, in this esports space and the social, everyone is such this like Twitter generation and meme and responding to everything. I'm like,
oh yeah.
Sometimes the best brands, and I hate it, the juggernaut brand, they don't respond to every wave of, we put out our deal. You love it or you hate it. If you hate it, we're not going to come back with a tweet being like, well, wait, no, that's not what we meant, guys. But sometimes you just got to leave your shit out there. We've made the decision.
The bigger thing for me is, to me, this is a gamble, in my personal opinion, because Piggy, in the mid-season madness, he probably destroyed the Florida Mayhem single-handedly on Reinhardt and Winston, respectively. Like, he was just going crazy. And
oh yeah,
me,
he was such a great Ryan in the playoffs. Awesome.
For me, this is a big gamble because you're counting on Doge to pick up the off tanks, much like how someone does for the Florida Mayhem.
Correct.
Not every player can do that.
Yeah, you're now hoping Doge is going to be a hyperflex. That is what we are finding out this season. Is the hyperflex, or like as close as you can get, tank players are the ones that are dominant. Your Reiners, your Kalujas, your Smurfs, who can do off tanks. They can main lane tanks. Can play 5-6 heroes instead of 2. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those are within one player, not 4 tanks trying to split it up, not 3 doing all this stuff. That seems to be the overarching tank flow, is try to find somebody who could do it. So they're putting a lot of stake in Doge to hopefully be somebody like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, as long as they can stop running the Doomfist comps 24/7 and find some new.
It ain't gonna work. It ain't gonna work for the next month. I could pretty much tell you that. So, and really quick though, before let's wrap up these challenges. You mentioned it earlier. Boston got a new player because Washington, which again, I'll make a quick allusion here. This is some of the story that came out. Washington is rumored to make a significant financial divestment in the Overwatch League, just because of all the issues we've talked about ad nauseum, and the business issues with the league and the teams.
Well, I mean, there's a bigger issue. I mean, you saw, I sent it over to you folks. You saw Enthusiast.
Yes, I have that. I have there. Oh,
yeah.
So
huge losses this year.
Right, but the bigger issue, and if you actually read through this, if you actually go through the financials, what I think is funny is in sports financing. So hey, let's get on. Okay, so when you're in sports, there is classification you have for assets that you refer to as intangible assets. So intangible assets are things that you can't necessarily sell, but retain some sort of a value within their potential, like future income potential, the cost of transitioning what that is, etc. So here's an example. If you have a lease on a stadium, that is an intangible asset because it's somebody else, and they could find value in it, right? If you have a licensing deal, it's an intangible asset because it can bring value within the future, right? Also, intangible assets include the franchise values themselves because you can resell. So what I thought was really funny about the overactive media release is that so they take their losses, and look, that's not a surprise. I won't beat them up on the loss. Like, FaZe had a $9 million loss, I think, in the first half. But then when you work out the scale, it's almost, how did you make so much money and still come up at a loss? Right? I would argue they're at the same efficiency.
Right.
Which is not necessarily a good sign because of this.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say is Washington's loss is Boston's gain.
But we're talking about the I want to hit Richard to finish this bit.
Okay.
Here's the problem with this asset problem, right? Player contracts, also part of intangible assets. Now, if you look at the numbers that Overactive has, and I think if you actually click on the finance, you can actually scroll down. If you actually click on their little deep dive where it says they released it, they list their intangible assets at $88 million. When you're evaluating the company, they will say that they have like $88 million in intangible assets, which includes their fees. So actually, if you go back,
where is it?
It should be like that first link. It'll say something like they release their financials.
Oh, okay.
So if you scroll down to the spreadsheet, at the bottom, this is me. I actually read these things. So see intangible assets. It's like it's on the top. Sorry, my monitor's really
no, there's nothing intangible
down. Yeah, you'll see
assets.
Oh, there. Non something intangible right there. The big 88 million. See that giant number?
Yes.
Okay. $8 million of their assets are intangible. Now, what's interesting about this press release is that when they wrote it, one of their industry notes was recent sales of licenses. Scroll up now. So remember that $88 million, and this includes your franchises. So scroll up. Okay, see this? How you have like misses. So keep scrolling up. The bottom of this release. Okay, scroll up. No. Okay. Notable industry transactions.
Yep.
Misfits sold their LEC slot.
Right.
Schalke sold theirs. And they're saying, oh, by the way, did you know we have one? They're queuing this up because they're selling the team. They're selling the slot. That is the only reason you put this here. Because you had an entire list of very bad financial results, and then you're seeing the notable industry transactions include the value here, of which this valuation is built into your intangible asset. So what this really means is, how are they coming up with a value of $88 million knowing just the franchises alone? Call of Duty League, Overwatch League, and the LEC slot. And the only slots that were sold were an LEC. So I'm telling you, this probably exists on a lot of... The problem with that classification is there's so many problems. It's known to be something you can really BS the...
Inflate, yeah.
So scroll up a little bit. So scroll up to, like, what are the big performance highlights? And they're saying, oh, we have a multi-million dollar 5-year agreement with TD Bank. Okay, how much is it? Didn't say.
Yeah. Yep.
You go through the numbers, doesn't say. But if you go to the revenue line, you can estimate what this was worth because it would be on the revenue line. So why it's really funny is that to say you're multi-million dollars, you just need to, and it's amortized over 5 years. Even if it was $1 million a year, even if it was $5 million, $1 million per year, that doesn't make up for any of this.
Yep.
So I'm not saying that OAM's bad, nothing like that at all. But with that, it makes you wonder about all the other types of accounting setups that have been set up. Because I know some teams are more than stable. And we've seen them because if you look at their broader operations, like I'm a huge fan of Misfit, right, with Mayhem and everything else, but they're quite stable as an organization. You don't see a lot of weird things happen around that larger system of management, right? So what you have to start to ask yourselves is you have to look at these numbers. I mean, enthusiasts numbers were even crazier.
Yeah.
That's all sorts of scary to me, but their entire play was to buy a media website, which is a huge mistake.
Yeah.
But what do I know about that stuff? Right? But,
plenty more than us.
This kind of stuff, I guarantee you, is happening with other teams, but
yes,
smaller amounts. And I think the Justice was, I actually think they probably have a pretty well-run organization. They probably know what's up. So they probably know what happened. And I think it is Boston's gain. As Plex said, I think Boston's benefiting from what I'm... Yeah. I think Boston, generally speaking, again, remember they got a cash... They've changed their ownership.
Right.
Let's go, Chris Krakowski and crew. You know, I'm down with it. You know, as much as I'll poke at Boston, you know, I respect what they do because Oxygen does a lot of wise work. They're owning the entire region. You know, they want events. They want a land center. They want everything to be that new form of entertainment. So yeah. I actually think, I think that's cool. So, like I said, behind all the things that we're seeing, and that's why people say, oh, we need a players union. I'm not saying you don't need these. And there is something much bigger there right at the face, and I'm always wondering why no analysts in the space are going in. Because this is the actual story. The numbers are there for you to see. There's only one person who does this. It's Adam Fitch. He writes all this stuff for Hitmarker.
Yep.
He used to write for Deserto, right? Dexerto? And now he's the news and blogs at Hitmarker. He is the only person that I've seen who goes into this in detail. So to anybody who's like curious about industry, follow his articles. Because they, for whatever reason, don't get any play. And maybe it's because it's not all sunshine and rainbows and let's stick together. It's all going to work itself out. He really does critique it. And I think it's telling that he's related to a page. Because that stuff is important from all levels. Because if you can't support the back office, you definitely can't. I mean, you know what I mean? Like the front. And then you definitely can't support.
But yeah, I mean, with the MAG transfer, the reason why I think this is going to work out for Boston, MAG, to me, was one of the two Junker Queen players that stood out big time. It's like MAG, it was MAG and someone who seemed to pick up the hero really quickly and just seemed to really have a good grasp of it. So the fact that, I mean, just as I get, they have to sort of cut down the player budget and things like that. But in doing so, they may have given Boston the best Junker Queen player.
They gave him a big boom.
Junker Queen is the better. So
Boston gets a buff. Then they get do they? Was Punk's not their only tank right now? Is he?
they've got Itzal, but he's just been confirmed as the two-way now with Boston Academy.
Gotcha. So then, Mag will be their primary other tank player for sure. So
we'll see Itzal every once in a while, I believe.
And then what about Washington? Does Washington have a backup tank, or are they gonna have to sign somebody?
They've got Kalios.
Okay, they do. That's right. All right. Well, we'll see if they have, from this recording, they have 2 days. But no, again, they could bring a contenders player up over the next few days and stuff before the games and stuff if they wanted to, if that's part of the plans. But no, I think it's a big buff for Boston, absolutely. And we'll see how Justice adapt to that. You know what I mean?
We're probably going to move on to this in a moment, but I'm just trying to think, who do Boston play next?
Well, I said because we got through a lot of that stuff. Before we go, we would be remiss if we didn't at least take a look at the week ahead.
I've just seen who it is.
We'll take a look at the week ahead.
Playing?
So the APAC teams make their debut.
Hey, okay. I have no idea how any of them are going to do
I have no idea.
Plex, tell us. You're good at this.
Yeah.
You'll be on the spot, why don't you?
So, we've got, and we have changes over there too. Like, again, we talked about this before. Guangzhou Charge have they have new players. They've got, which could, I don't think it's going to light their world on fire, but I think it's going to bump them up maybe a slot or two. Do Dragons and Seoul continue to kind of pop off? Do Hangzhou and Philly? I don't know.
At this point, I've got more faith in Dragons than I do Charge because it's all the new players, but same coaching staff. So
sure,
I don't know. I've got more faith in Dragons. Dynasty, it's going to come down to who picks up the brig. I was trying to think. They've got Vidame and Creative.
Yes,
I believe they've got. No, they don't have Jonak.
No.
So I'll be curious to see who picks up the brig and who picks up the Lucio for them.
I was saying, we talked about this a lot before. I think the Junker Queen is obviously key, but I think a lot of people sleep on the Brigs are going to be the key player because I think there's not as many. I think there's a good chunk of Lucio players. I think, but really good Brig specialists are going to help change the game. Yeah,
not enough people really focus on Brig.
So
you saw. Those whip shots when the Genji comes in with the blade, and it takes so long to come down. That was in the Toronto game.
Yeah. Just shot him into the air.
Yeah.
Wasted the whole blade.
He flashes up, and then you hit him up, and it's like...
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, and my blade's done. Yep.
Yeah, I was like, it's like Fate when he juggled I'm trying to remember who it was. He juggled someone against a wall.
Yeah. Forever.
The Mayhem years ago.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's also another factor that Mayhem, going back to them for a moment, they proved that the Ana Zen composition could work as well.
See, I hard disagree with that. They proved it didn't work to me.
Okay.
They lost.
Give me an example of why it didn't work.
They lost 3-0. And they hard forced it for 3 maps, and it did not help them.
2 maps. I'd like to point out. It was only when they subbed Surmageddon. The first map was Animo, and they played the Big Lucio.
Okay. Well,
I'll counter your point with how they performed against London Spitfire. RuPaul looked ridiculously good, and Majed on Hollywood defense didn't die a single time.
Very good. The players are incredibly talented. I don't care about winning a team fight here or there. I don't care about that. That is not results though.
So let me ask you this, Matt. Ana or Brigitte alongside the Lucio in this composition? What would you go with?
Brig.
I'm going to say the Ana.
Okay, but I think it's a throw pick a little bit.
Okay, so here's the reasoning behind it. And I think that we might see APAC pick up the Ana because not just because there's talent, but Ana is a natural counter to the one thing that's keeping this composition alive. And that's the AoE sustain from Briggs Inspire and Lucio, those area effect heal. Because take that out of the equation, they've only got the burst from the commanding shout. And even then, that's not much. So, as an example, RuPaul hit things like a 4-man Bionade on Hollywood, and everybody on Spitfire died.
Sure.
Literally, everybody died. And
that's huge.
I think the Bionic Grenade is the perfect counter to this composition. So I would not be surprised if we see a bit more of that this weekend.
Maybe. I think Zen is actually a better counter to Queen. So like that didn't surprise me because the Discord is still pretty strong and they can take her out of the equation pretty quick. Because like the rampage is like a giant Bionade too. Like that as all if you can get that rampage into a clumped up team, it has a similar effect. So and again, I like right. You maybe you've convinced me a little bit. But like it's still I still think the way this meta is unfolding is it's. And maybe I'm buying into a little bit of the hype and the talk around it. I'll admit that. But it seems like it really does seem like if you don't mirror, you lose. Even if you get some good plays, it feels like that you just have to mirror.
I'm with you there, but you have to keep in mind that in order for Brig to get the Inspire passive up, she has to be doing damage, i.e. swinging the flail.
Yes.
Ana doesn't have that restriction.
No, of course.
And also, she provides burst healing, which is actually pretty handy if you can get a lot of damage all at once.
I mean, please. At the end of the day, please let it become more viable. Please, like if they can find ways in these scrims and like it's working, please. Because yes, if I don't have to see the exact same comp across from each other every time, I love it.
Which is why Mayhem Spitfire was so fun because you saw them bust out the Reinhardt composition.
They tried everything, right? You just try it all, you know?
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have a lot of this though. Realistically speaking, it's going to take a while to fix this, and I don't think any changes can happen unless they get what they have to do is get rid of that self-heal on the act for Junker Queen, because like the way that hero's been designed, it breaks the basic rules they set out in the game that nothing is overly self-healing. They basically gave her the things that took away from Lucio. It makes no sense.
Yep.
See what I mean? Like the stackability.
The stackability with the speed stuff too is so silly with that the shout speed boost and everything. That's a bit busted.
You know what I do like? I love seeing fast exits. That I will say I really love seeing.
Say the disengages.
The disengages, I really love that. That's so. That's such a true fight. You know what I mean? Like
I have noticed that there's a lot more of those.
Oh, it's so cool. That's like my favorite parts where like peace, and they just back out.
It's nice to see people just stay there fighting until I'm dead. It's like, oh, it's a smart pull in, pull out, pull in, pull out.
When you use the shout is dictating how they go.
Yes, that's very true.
I think how long's the cooldown on that ability anyway?
11 seconds, I believe, once it's completed.
Long. Holy cow.
Yeah, you've really got to time it.
Yeah,
going back to these games, sorry, Richard, go ahead.
No, but I was going to say, with this game schedule, I think something that will be really telling is the game on Friday. New York and Vancouver. I think that the game that kicks off on the 19th.
Yeah.
That, I think, will be really interesting because, like I said, New York's looking good. I think Kellen looks better on Junker Queen than he did on Winston.
Yeah, and I was going to say, on almost anything this year so far. Yeah.
Did you notice how effective, like, his alts were more on target? Like he could hit 3 to 4 people at a time, whereas some folks were like running into walls. Like he
well,
he did quite well. Higher value with his alt usage.
Yeah.
But Vancouver's gonna come out like just going like they're gonna come out punching like swinging like Tyson. So just 100% from the get go, and I want to see how they hold up.
Yeah.
Because I could see that one going for Vancouver. That game, I could see that going for Vancouver just by because like New York can get in those spots where you beat them down enough, and then they start to spread, and then like Yaki tries to do and that will lose them the game.
Yeah,
Because what's going to happen is that they're going to run into the Sojourn, and they've got to stay on that. They like have this aversion to that, and I'm like, gotta stick with it.
It's going to depend on the map because obviously Ash has different benefits on different maps. Sojourn's different on each map, but I think this match is going to be an interesting test because we've seen the better teams go up against the so-called weaker teams in general last week.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
This week we're going to see what happens when the two supposed weaker teams go head to head.
Yeah, because Toronto Dallas I think is another really big one. These are like the middle.
Yeah.
Really good though, right? Like Shock Uprising obviously Uprising did really well. It's still Shock. Like it's very difficult. But then I look at like Valiant Philly, I want to see some clean results, and Spitfire Houston.
Yeah, that
I really want to see that split.
Yeah, I'm very curious and terrified myself.
I have no idea.
I wonder why.
But I like that though. Like,
yeah, I do too.
There's a parody that's come with this meta at certain tiers, and I think that's really, really good. But I have a question for you, and I'm really curious. Oh, and that Shock Glads I think is going totally. They're
gonna go bonkers. Yeah.
Justice Mayhem, the J-Hem game. That'll be. Oh God, Toronto's gonna play Glads. Okay.
But like I don't. That's not as clear cut as it used to be.
Of course.
Right now.
See, before we get too far ahead, I actually have a theory. I'll tell you this. I did have a thought. So you look at the teams that are struggling in this meta versus the teams that are doing well. How many of those teams each way went to the mid-season madness? Because the general rule I've seen, with some exceptions, of course, has been the teams that went to the mid-season madness tournament have struggled to adapt to this meta more so than those that didn't. So could it be that there was more teams had more practice?
Well, yeah, but at the same time, like that brings up a whole, what kind of practice can you have? Because even if you didn't make the mid-season madness, you don't have a lot of people to scrim with, so you weren't getting a ton of scrim time. And again, this game is not live, so you can't go and play ranked or anything.
It's not just that; it's also like analysis. Like,
sure, yeah, you got some extra time,
things like that.
But it depends, though. I would say because a lot of teams that are doing well did go to the midseason. Dallas went to the midseason madness. Florida went to the midseason madness.
Yeah, but both games Mayhem played against teams that are also there. They played London Spitfire and San Francisco Shock. So,
right.
I don't know. I mean, will be interesting to see because that's just my hunch. Obviously, there are exceptions to the rule, but
sure,
that's just my general theory. Because we've seen a similar thing in the previous metas where teams that come back later from competing in the tournaments have had a struggle at the beginning.
I mean, and that you can. Yeah, I think that just comes down to sometimes potentially scheduling. I mean, when you just go, and you get worn down a little bit easier. Where if your teams have maybe a little more rest, a little time more to analyze, a little more time to get yourself mentally, physically ready, whatever it is. Yeah, no, that is valid.
Yeah, so looking over these games, seeing as there's any that jump out to me.
It'll be. I mean, Shock Glads will be getting from two teams that are top of the mountain, but having a weird time with this one.
Yeah, I mean, for me, and I don't know if you guys will agree with me. I'm probably going to get butchered for this, but when I watched Kaluge over the last week, he just seemed non-existent at times. It's like how you often get a striker in the Premier League banging in goals for fun. And then all of a sudden they go through a dry patch.
Yep.
That's what Kaluge is right now. It's a case of you look at him, like you see, I mean, against Mayhem, Proper and Kilo were the ones to break things open after like bashing their head against a brick wall for so long. If it weren't for those two, Mayhem actually were the better team in that game. I'm not just saying that as a Mayhem bias. I'm saying that as an observer. That Mayhem looks to be the better team. It's just a case of Kilo and Proper were able to drag the team over the finish line. And Kaluge, he was getting diffed by someone a lot of the time of that Junker Queen. So the fact he's gone up against, assuming Mag again in Boston, and of course Boston have a very stable support line. They've got a very consistent damage line, which could support Mag. I don't know. I could see Boston edging that one.
What? Which one? This is the fuel one?
No, Boston versus Shock. I could see Boston winning that because of the Mag different. It's going to come down to whether or not Kaluge can up his game on the Junker Queen.
I'm literally like, it's one of those things where like, yeah, you were like, I'm gonna get butchered, like, and I wanted to maybe butcher you for it, but then like I'm like, I don't know if I can. Like, I wouldn't say he was non-existent, but he was not the guy we saw 3 weeks ago for sure. And so like at this point, like it makes me frustrated and happy. Literally every one of these freaking games, I'm literally just throwing my hands in the air. Like,
I think we got to see. I think
it's gonna take 2-3 weeks. Like 2 more weeks of like really flushing this thing out and seeing who's getting it. Who's getting
Plex,
lucky?
Not everybody can be as bad and as clear as Manchester United right now. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but
Brentford. Who's going to be Brentford?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we all agreed that there's going to be a lot of pressure on the Brig players, but I think
Yes.
there's just as much pressure on the Junker Queen players. I mean,
Oh,
Oh,
for sure.
absolutely.
last week,
Yes.
Mag
Absolutely.
looked really good. Someone looked really good. And it's going to come down to who can get the Junker Queen quickly enough.
Yes. Yeah.
Or who can find the right counter picks to the Junker Queen.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what the teams have learned from that first week of competition.
Yeah.
But I digress. And as
No.
I said, I'm willing to stick my neck out and say that Boston Uprising might have a chance to beat Shock.
You know what?
Ooh.
Ooh, spicy. That's a hot take. I
That
like
is a
it. We're
spicy.
gonna have to hold Plex to this one.
Yes.
No, but overall,
Spicy
like
than car Q videos? I've got no idea.
No, but
Had to get that one in.
You know, look, hey, outside of all the crazy roster swaps, the organizational blips, and some of the repetitive gameplay, I am really looking forward to this week's games. I think now is where we're going to figure out a little bit more about where these teams can end up, because we're at the parity plays. We're at those tiers that even we had at the beginning of the stage. But I do have one question, though. If you go to the Summer Showdown link and it shows the rankings, it shows the standings based off of the stage, not based off of the season. So who actually gets into the Summer Showdown? Because it says Summer Showdown qualifiers and New York's in 8th
They've reset.
place.
So the previous results do not count to this one.
It's okay, I thought it was supposed to be cumulative at first, or did they change that? Or did I just misunderstand it?
Well,
that's
they said
what.
at the start of the weekend
right.
that previous results are not going to count. This is a clean slate. But
I heard that too.
But
Plex.
these results will count towards there. So yeah, I mean, as far as I'm aware, it's a clean slate. There's previous results do not impact your qualification status.
That's awesome. That
obviously
means New York can actually make it. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's another factor, is that they've got something to play for now.
And Toronto can make their own LAN.
Yeah.
Potentially. And they might even miss out on it.
Oh God.
Yeah. Well, before we go though, Richard, do you have a series of words for me to say out loud?
I'm waiting for this.
So writing something really quickly.
For those that don't know, again, if you're newer to the listening audience, anytime one of our, let's call it our native teams, for me that's the Outlaws, for Plex that's Florida Mayhem, for Richard he gets 2, that's both Toronto and or New York. Whenever our teams play each other, there's a wager on the line, and it's very simple. It's the winner writes a scathing promo in some way, shape, or form for the loser to read live here on the air. And then the loser, in my case, me, from the New York-Houston game, will have to then also go into Overwatch, buy a skin with those lovely, lovely league tokens that I can't give away to you. So you have to go buy them. Go buy a skin from the opposing team. So I will have to go buy a New York skin from one of my primary heroes.
I pick the skin? I want to be the one to pick the skin.
I can't decide if I'm going to let other people pay. This will be the first.
Oh, come on! I let you two do it for me.
Wait, you let us. Wait, did you let us pick the?
Yes, the Houston Outlaws one. I gave you the choice.
Okay, so yeah, all right. I'll give you the choice. So it's going to be my new main, one of my new mains, Ana, or. I'll go back to Ana or Soldier. I'll let you.
I'm saying I'm just buying time for Richard here, but I'm going to say Ana.
Okay.
Okay. Like I said, it's your new main,
yes,
and you're more likely to get support queue than you are a damage queue these days.
That is true. So more people will have to see me playing it.
Exactly.
All right.
Okay.
Lay it on me, big boy.
Yep.
All right. Let me open this up. The audience. Okay. He went really easy. Sorry. I'm sure there will be ample opportunity. Me. Okay.
You.
Hello, everyone. Today, I wanted to speak to you directly. Not as Drama King Matt or any persona. Today, I wanted to speak to you as myself, Matt Raywalt. I wanted to speak to you about the greatness of New York, not just as a city, but as an Overwatch League team. While we already know that their pizza is far superior to the cheese casserole that we claim as a pizza in my home city of Chicago, they have proven themselves to be a force to be reckoned with within the Overwatch League. That's really it. New York is a better city and better team than Houston, and they make better pizza than Chicago. Their hot dogs are also better. We serve salad with a wiener. What does that even mean? What is it you serve? Oh, we serve salad with a wiener with our Chicago style hot dog. That's what he's saying. Oh God, I almost had to vomit saying that. You went easy on me in a way, but I feel dirty saying many of those words.
You serve salad with a wiener.
It's accoutrement, okay?
I mean, I like it, but it's salad with a wiener.
And it's not a cheese casserole. It's just it's extra
it's
loving.
Cheese casserole.
It's more loving for the pushing for the eating.
I really
for the
didn't
desire.
have much bad to say about Houston. I actually like that city. I like the team. Chicago is
no, but you
cool
got to do it. You damn right it is. But no, you got to take your shots. You got to take your shots.
Yeah. It is a cheese casserole. Although you have that other pizza in Chicago. You do have
tavern style.
Yeah.
Tavern
That's good.
style.
I do like that one. It's the deep
square
dish
cut.
I didn't get.
Yeah. Deep dish is like it's a fun experiment. Again, when I'm in the mood, it is a delectable, indulgent treat.
Yeah,
it is not like the back to like the early part of the 20th century Chicago style pizza.
I think your tavern style, to me, I'm like, that's far superior. It is. It reminds me of a grandma pie. You know, it's just like a good square cut. Actually, they're pretty much the same thing. That's
Pat's
the funny
Pizza,
thing.
ladies and gentlemen. Pat's Pizza.
Pat's Pizza.
Hashtag on ad.
Yes. Not an ad. No, Pat doesn't know me. Pat doesn't know me from Adam. But yeah, so there you have it. I'll be on stream later tonight, so you'll see my fresh New York Anna skin probably getting some play time.
It is a good looking skin. Come on.
It is a good looking skin.
It's a great looking one.
It's a good looking skin. I'll give it that. But so for all that, I mean, God, we scratched the surface on so many of these things. I'm sure the drama hasn't ended for the week. I'm sure there'll be some more things. Maybe
2 more days, man.
Yep, before the 18th, we'll see.
You are the drama king, so
yes, and of course, everybody watching, everybody listening. We also now have more social media representation for the show. There is a Twitter account. It's all under, if you go to the link tree for OverBOTCH, it's all there. I have a Facebook group. We have a Facebook page that I'm starting to kind of share links, share news, share updates as well. If you are still a Facebook person. So again, Linktree, OverBOTCH, or however you spell it, it's like linktr.ee/OverBOTCH. That has all the links for the YouTube, the Spotify, this Twitch, the Twitter, all that good stuff. Follow that as well as if you use Juked GG. Check us out. We are a verified creator on Juked. It's kind of, a lot of people don't say this. I'm going to say it because I don't care. It's like Reddit, but you can actually handle it and there's actual discourse on there.
The Q&As and the active discussions are awesome on Juked.
There's
totally not a plug.
Professionals
I like engaging on Juked, and I don't like engaging on any platforms.
Yes.
Yeah. Juked is fun, and you get news really fast. Like when the Myeongbong thing happened, it literally showed up within 15 seconds. They are good at what they do. It is a great aggregator for news, and you can actually see some pretty interesting discussions.
Yes. So yeah, if you're chances are if you're into a show like this where we break down all these macro and micro things or whatever, you would probably like something like Juked. Go find us on there, OverBOTCH, verified creator. But until next time and more drama happens in the arena, I am the drama king for the Great Root Bear and all the way across the pond, Plexomatic. Thank you guys for joining us. Hit like, hit subscribe, leave comments, do all that social media mumbo jumbo. It helps us so much. We appreciate you, and we will see you on the next one.
See ya.
Bye.